Welcome to another episode of the Snap Fantasy Football Podcast, your weekly dose of news and advice that comes to your pocket every single Saturday. Holding it down, here we got Mac, Mark, Scott, and Landon. Enjoy today's show.
What's up, and welcome to another episode of the Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. Today, me and the boys are jumping into the ever-elusive tight end conversation as we discuss 24-year-old tight end out of Baltimore, Mr. Mark Andrews. Now, before we get going, just want to shout out, we are very active on social media, so you can check us out on Twitter and Instagram at snap_fantasy. If you could throw us a like or a subscription, we would appreciate it. We've been grinding all off season, and we will be doing the same right into the 2020 season, so we love interacting with you guys. All right, on to the topic today. There is a lot of debate about what tier this man deserves to be in. For me, Mark Andrews is an elite second-tier tight end, and I love the guy. But before I get into that, I'm going to toss it over to Landon. Lando, what do you think about Mark Andrews?
Mark Andrews is one of the most interesting tight end cases in the NFL right now. He's getting drafted fairly high. He's in the fourth round. If you followed our draft or pass episode, there is some really great value in the fourth round. So you need to make that decision on whether you want a locked and loaded tight end one, and a high-end tight end one that is, or do you get a high-end wide receiver, but then lose that consistency week to week. I posted a poll on Twitter, and I asked you if you thought he could impress this year and jump into that tier one. Not that tier two, Scotty. Tier one with Kelce and Kittle at the top, or is he going to regress and be in that big tier with Hunter Henry, Zach Ertz, Darren Waller, guys that are still good and that will produce on your fantasy teams, but they're not at that next level. And it was at 55% of you thought he would impress. So the hype is definitely real on Mark Andrews. The problem is, first I'll go with my projection. I still think he's going to be under 1,000 yards. I think he could have 78 receptions, 976 yards with 9 touchdowns. Last year he had 10, but again, Lamar Jackson's efficiency in the red zone was out of this world. He is the number one in his offense, and I do think he could make that tier jump. He's probably the only tight end in my mind that he could actually jump a tier from 2 to 1. The rest are kind of stuck in that lower end guy. So the problem is, for me, I prefer a late round tight end. I would go for TJ Hawkinson in the 11th round, Jonnu Smith in the 10th, 11th, 12th round. That's my strategy. Will it pay off? That's yet to be seen. But Marky, what are your thoughts on Mark Andrews this season?
Yeah, so I don't know, like right off the bat, I just want to talk about like the spectrum of tight ends kind of broadening a little bit. Like when you think about tier one, I think you're right to say that Mark Andrews is in that conversation with Kelce, Kittle, Ertz. But still, I just don't know if I could personally make that jump at 404. I think that's a total reach. And when you poll impress versus regress, I would vote on a regress from him. I don't know. You're right. I think the stars were aligned for the Baltimore Ravens last year, and that's a reason why he would have gotten the ball so much. But in the end zone, he is a big dude. He is like 6'5", like 260, like a big man, and he can haul in a good ball, like really good hands for a tight end. But personally, there is too much value around him in the fourth round for me to go for it. While he is also very talented and he's a part of the team that runs the ball more than any other team in the NFL, you also have to consider that Hayden Hurst is no longer on this team, and he was a competitor for Andrews on this offense, albeit a minor impedance in his efficiency. I think he'll still excel a little more, and he does have that going for him with Hayden Hurst not being on the team. But let's say hypothetically I draft Mark Andrews at his spot at the 404 right now. I would be shaking my head later in the season for sure on fading guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire in that round, or even a Mark Ingram. I don't know. I would not grab a tight end this early when the spectrum of tight ends is getting wider and wider. I would probably wait until the 9th and go with someone like Noah Fant, who I think is going to have a big breakout this year. And, even guys like Hunter Henry or someone that you could get, 5 rounds later than this guy. You think about how much you can do in that space. I think the touchdowns are going to go down a bit for Mark Andrews, but he could very well see close to 100 targets again, which is always a rare and excellent thing for a tight end in the NFL. Mackenzie, I'd like to know where your head's at on this one.
It's funny you mentioned a couple of the points because they ring true to what I'm thinking too. And back to what Landon said about having him in the same tier as Kelce and Kittle. I think Kittle is barely in the same tier as Travis Kelce. And I say that because volume alone, Travis Kelce's been seeing well over 130 targets for multiple seasons now. He has cemented himself as basically a wide receiver that you can slot into your tight end positions. So Mark Andrews isn't there yet, but he's worthy of the conversation. And part of it is because of the offense. Let's not discount what Lamar Jackson does to a defense. He is a complete target, and defenses have to game plan for him. No defense is going out and game planning for Mark Andrews. And the reason why Baltimore has been able to be so productive with their tight ends is because they run 40% of their sets using 2 or more tight ends. And more times than not, they run the ball out of those positions. But they're also really good at running play action. And play action can sometimes lead to Lamar Jackson doing what he does with his legs, scrambling, and finding a wide open tight end in the flat. Mark Andrews is also really good at getting downfield when given the opportunity. Over the last 2 seasons, he ranks 3rd in total air yards per target. That's pretty solid. So yes, does he have the opportunity? 100%. Is he a huge red zone threat? Absolutely. But at tight end, I'm not looking to buy in on something that I missed out on last year. I'm looking to find this year's Mark Andrews or this year's Darren Waller, because those are 2 guys that ascended last year that we had no idea about going into the season. And so really you can't plan for it, but I'm looking to pin my flag on Mark Andrews' counterpart, Hayden Hurst, who now is in Atlanta. He's part of the Falcons, and Matt Ryan likes to target tight ends. Look at what happened with Austin Hooper. Dirk Cutter's offense is featured around the tight end. And so if I'm going to take my shots at tight end, I'm going to do it with the Hayden Hurst or the Mike Gesicki's 6 rounds later. I just don't think the draft capital for Mark Andrews is worth it in the 4th round. He's going at the 404 right now. If I'm going to spend up on tight end and get the elite guy, I might as well do it in the back of the 2nd or beginning of the 3rd with Kelce or Kittle. So it's not that I don't like Mark Andrews. I have him in Dynasty. I'm through the roof about Mark Andrews. But in redraft, I'm willing to wait on tight end.
Well, Mac, it's like you took the ball and put it on a tee for me to try to hit out of the park here, because one of the reasons I'm so high on Mark Andrews is that, like you mentioned, last season I tried to, go real low on the tight end position for maybe the first time in my fantasy career. And as somebody who rolled out Mr. Mike Gesicki for 2 consecutive weeks in a waiver wire flux, I literally needed the guy to get 1 reception for 4 yards to win the game. Couldn't do it. And that's why I'm high on actually using draft capital on an elite or just under elite tight end. It's the ability to know consistently week to week that you have a guy who's basically a wide receiver lining up in an incredibly scarce position. What really makes Mark Andrews special is kind of his situation. Now, the debate about whether you want to draft Zach Ertz or Mark Andrews can rage on because they are neck and neck. And if you want to see why Zach Ertz might have the edge, I'd recommend checking out our one of our videos that we did previous, that I'll put the link right there, where Mac talks all about kind of the subsets and how much Philly uses their tight end. Now, with that being said, Mark Andrews is clearly the cream of the crop when you look after Zach Ertz at what is left. I just want to talk about, if you elect to pass on Mark Andrews and you say, I'm going to roll the dice, what you have left, the Darren Wallers, Hunter Henry, Evan Ingram, Tyler Higbee, I just would not feel nearly as good getting those guys even a few rounds later than going in on a 24-year-old Mark Andrews. Nothing has changed in Baltimore that really should cause a regression. If anything, as Mark highlighted, he's in a better situation this year. And I just think there is a lot of value put into not playing the waiver wire every week, trying to find a situation that you think will be beneficial for a position where once you get past the cream of the crop, a lot of the time it's a week-to-week boom or bust, and I do not like playing that game.
And one thing to talk about before we go, and I failed to mention it, is like I talked about Lamar Jackson being a problem, but then you factor in the run game that Mark said, like they like to run the ball more than any other team in the league. You'd factor in J.K. Dobbins joining Mark Ingram in the backfield, and that's just a lot of running talent to try to stop. And then you've got Marquise Hollywood Brown sprinting down the field, and maybe Devin Duvernay finds himself in there too. If the field is stretched and you have to worry about the run, what do you do with the midfield? How do you cover Mark Andrews with his size and catchability? Mark Andrews just has the ability to find a soft spot, and they're soft spots because there's so many liabilities for defenses. Mark Andrews just exploits them. So it might not be a volume thing with Mark Andrews, but it could be an efficiency thing, and partly due to the reason why in the red zone he is so wide open.
All right. Well, anyone who has ever played any version of Madden ever knows whenever you're trying to take down a mobile quarterback, you know who always gets open in the flats? The tight end. So I am very high on Mark Andrews for 2020. And I would say even in the fourth round, I'm all in, because when you get that elite level talent who's basically going to give you WR numbers, slot him in, go to sleep, use your fab or your waiver priority on the other positions that you need it for, because you've got yourself a week-to-week starter. Hope you guys liked today's segment. We're going to be just churning them out all the rest of the offseason, getting you ready for the draft for the 2020 season. We're really amped. Summer is, in full pitch, but soon enough, fall will be here, the leaves will be changing, and we will be getting out a draft kit video for you to enjoy. Hope your summer is going great. Make sure to check us out on socials at snap_fantasy on Insta and Twitter. And hit that subscribe and like button. We will catch you guys next time.